Well, as I have been announcing over the course of, I guess, just yesterday mainly, but there's been other videos, I've made allusions to the fact that I'm going to be going on vacation for about 10 days. It is my birthday and the lovely, talented, and scholarly Brittany Page's birthday on the 21st and 27th, respectively. And we're going to Scotland for 10 days. And I've been talking about a guest host who's going to be sitting in, probably, not standing. And this is the big reveal for those of you who have been curious and asking questions and emailing and voicemailing me. Here we go. It is, drum roll, imaginary drum roll, Garrison Hayes. Garrison, thank you for joining me today. And thank you for accepting the I don't know how auspicious, but invite to guest host while I'm gone.
No, I am excited. First of all, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm really excited to spend a week with your people. I think we're gonna have a good time, and I'm hoping, selfishly, Jesse, I'm hoping that the Supreme Court gives us great things to talk about next week, and I'm hoping that, I mean, we have a lot on the docket. Yeah. There's a debate between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump in Atlanta, Georgia, which is going to be insane.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court's very likely to bring down some decisions in the coming days. And so I feel, you're saying thank you to me. I'm almost saying thank you to you, because I get to talk about all this stuff with some amazing people in your community.
They say that there's no good time. I don't know. They say it's something I've thought before, like a guy like John Oliver or Jon Stewart, people who do our job on the internet talking about politics, that there's no good time to take a break because invariably something big is going to break. But there's already things that we know are going to break while you're guest hosting. So there will be no shortage of good things to talk about. So again, thank you. And for all those of you out there, if you're not familiar with Garrison's content, and I'll say this at the end as well, go subscribe to his channel. I feel very lucky. I color myself very, very fortunate to have had you say yes. So it's going to be fantastic. And I would expect everybody to treat you with respect like they would me, or whatever the hell that means.
I hope so. Click the videos. If nothing else, click and watch them.
The other thing I want to talk about very briefly before we start talking about Black Republicans is your kids' book that you wrote. A kid's book about Juneteenth. We're here just a couple of days out, or this will air tomorrow, so a day out from June 19th, the holiday. Holy shit! Amazing! This is fantastic. What's the story behind this?
Well, so a kid's book about Juneteenth. Really, I say all the time, it's actually in the book that this is one of those books that's better to read together. It's better together. And I wrote the book because I know that this is a growing conversation around the country with it being made a federal holiday. And so I wanted something for kids to be able to engage with this holiday, for parents to learn alongside, for families to learn together. And so I saw this opportunity to write this book with the wonderful A Kid's Book About imprint. They have some incredible books about, so many different topics, from really dark topics like mass shootings and all of that. But they contextualize these topics in ways that allow for kids to engage with them and understand. And so it's really cool to be a part of that family, and to have this work, this book. You showed it. I have one here as well. To kind of help families learn about Juneteenth and the incredible story behind this important holiday.
Well, again, another encouragement to the audience. You can go to Amazon, or there's other booksellers that you can get it. It is great. And it would be a great gift for your kids or someone you know. Definitely check it out. Which kind of leads me, it's kind of a natural pathway to talk about Black Republicans, which is it's a question I get a lot, and I'm just not well equipped enough to answer it because, I don't know if anybody knows, I'm not Black. And so I don't like to speak out of my realm of expertise. And, the Black community is not a monolith. You're not the official spokesman for Black people. But you certainly have a lived experience that I don't have, and I want to lean on your expertise here. I think, and this is based on just Pew Research, that Black Republicans, I'll just read the blurb from Pew Research. Black Republicans are younger than Black Democrats, as well as white Republicans. Around 3 in 10 Black Republicans, 28%, are ages 18 to 29. Now, I think that had there been a resource like this and adjacent to this, when kids are growing up and it's taught to them, maybe that number wouldn't be quite as high. Your age of Black Republicans. How much do you think education? And also, let's say this: I'm all over the place here, as I always am. I think that a delineation needs to be made between your average everyday Black voter who considers themselves a Republican, and then the griftopia, the opportunists like the Candace Owens and the others who make a name for themselves in MAGA world. I specifically am talking right now about run-of-the-mill Black voters. But what's your take?
Yeah, so you're right, Jesse. First of all, I am not the end all be all for opinion and thought on what Black people believe. I do think I have a pretty good understanding of what the majority of Black people believe. And this is based on the polling that you've referenced from Pew, as well as my lived experience as a Black person who lives in Black community and has lived in Black community for my entire life. I have a general understanding. And I think the reason why Black Republicans are so interesting, I actually think this country is somewhat obsessed with the Black conservative and the Black Republican more broadly, for reasons. One, it's kind of an enigmatic kind of group. It's a group of folks that you can't fully understand. I think the interest almost betrays the truth of where the Republican Party is today. I think there is the kind of fascination with Black Republicans in so many ways. It almost kind of tips your hand that we understand the Republicans have aligned themselves with white supremacist power for at least the last 60 years, right? And so how could Black people find themselves casting their political lot with these folks, right? That's the big question. And if we go back through history, there are so many clues to where we find ourselves today. On the one hand, I think that Black people, like any other group of people, you will find folks across the political spectrum, from conservative to liberal and progressive and socialist and everywhere in between. And if you look through the history of Black political power over time, you see several folks who kind of come to mind. At least for me, I think about Isaiah Montgomery back in the 1890s. This was a man down in Mississippi who decided to vote. He was the only Black delegate at the Constitutional Convention in 1890 in Mississippi. Wow. The one where they decided that Black men were no longer allowed to vote in the state. And he voted in alignment with the white supremacists at that time. He was admired by Booker T. Washington sometime later, who made the argument that Black people should make themselves more suitable and more useful to white people post-emancipation. Shouldn't be worried about your rights. You should just be worried about getting yourself together so that you can be very useful to white America. And so you see these figures over time who find themselves in alignment with white power. And those people, you mentioned some names, in Candace Owens, and I would say maybe a Tim Scott or Byron Donalds today. Sure. They come in, they fit into that legacy of Black folks who have decided that their best chances are to stand alongside the political power and the political structures that are often at odds with Black liberation and Black power.
It is. I mean, there's been several movements within republicanism and Black republicanism, I guess, I saw recently a TikTok or a short of yours on, probably here on YouTube, but Instagram, what are they called? Reels. And it was about this particular thing, but the Democratic plantation that gets talked about, or Blexit, or just the for me, the very curious lack of understanding or ignoring of the Southern strategy and the role that Lee Atwater played in all of this. Do you think that there's a willing blindness that goes on, or is it a self-interest of trying to get ahead themselves and just succumbing to the fact that white supremacy is kind of the order of the day in the United States.
Can we say that it's both? Like, on the
Sure.
one hand, I think that there are some folks who just don't know their history, who aren't plugged into what's happening around the country. They don't know about Lee Atwater. They don't know about the Southern strategy and the way that they absolutely, speaking of the Republican Party, like, align themselves with the narratives and the beliefs of former Southern Democrats in order to bring them into the Republican Party to shore up their political power. They don't know about that history.
Yeah.
But there are also, for sure, Jesse, folks who are absolutely operating in bad faith for their own personal gain. They're doing this to make money. They're doing this for platform and power. And we see them. I see you. And I think our audience here sees them as well. I know what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I think at its core, we have to get to a place where we understand that Black people aren't dumb. Like, can we just agree that Black people are making complex political decisions when they go into the voting booth and they vote for Democrats? It's not because they've been hoodwinked and bamboozled. It's because they've looked at the political landscape and said that neither of these two options are fully for me, but there's one that's a little bit more for me than the other one. And they're making those complex political decisions on purpose. And we got to give folks credit for doing that without denigrating them along the lines of saying the Democratic plantation. I think that's so dismissive and so wrong and downplays all of the complexity happening with the Black vote.
Well, I think it's rooted itself in racism that Black folks aren't smart enough to make a decision on their own, and they're just going to go along with whatever Joe Biden says to do. I've heard all kinds of criticism of Joe Biden when he made the stupid remark that if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black, or whatever he said. Yep. Stupid. I don't think there was enough of a mea culpa moment. I'm sure internally he regrets it, but certainly. They have a mind of their own, Black Republicans, and they've come to that decision through whatever justifications. I do think a lot of people would be surprised to know, and this is another thing from Pew, that Black Republicans are about as likely as Black Democrats to report frequent experiences of discrimination. About 8 in 10 Black Republicans, that's about 79%, say they have personally experienced discrimination because of their race or ethnicity. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that. They would think that that Black Republicans would say, "Oh no, racism's not a problem. Discrimination is not a problem. I've never experienced it." And then that is what leads them to Republicanism and carrying water for white supremacists. Which, for me, that's just what it is in different terms.
Yeah.
Help me understand.
I actually think you're getting to something very important, which is that there's a difference between, I imagine Pew's going to survey 5,000 random Black Republicans. Like, there's a difference between the everyday Black conservative who may find themselves in alignment with the Republican Party on any number of issues and agree or disagree. Maybe they are conservative around abortion rights, or maybe they're conservative around gender and sexuality and whatever their Christianity or their belief or whatever it is that leads them to align with that party. I think there's a difference between those folks who are American conservatives and the people we see on TV, the folks who are in Congress, the folks who are the talking heads. I think there's a difference, and we have to kind of make that difference here. Like, we have to actually highlight that, because those people who have so much to gain from saying the most extreme thing, that racism isn't real and that this country doesn't have that kind of, like, those people have something very specific to gain from saying those things. But when you survey everyday Americans, folks that I may disagree with politically, but are still Black nonetheless, they say, yeah, my experience of being a Black person in this country means that I have experienced racism personally. And I can tell you, as a Black person, it's real, folks. It's actually a real thing. I believe it or not, it's real. And I think that bit of data, talking to Black conservatives, Black Republicans, and even they are just as likely as, say, a Black Democrat to say, like, yeah, I experienced racism. I think that is a clue for our people watching.
What is it that you think is special about Black Republicans that they have the ability to ignore or set aside or not think it's a deal breaker the well-documented reality of the history and present future, or the present and what will be the future of Donald Trump's racism. It just seems to not be a deal breaker. And I say special about Black Republicans because I don't think it's a special thing to not even recognize racism if you're generally just status quo white Republican voter. It seems it's met with surprise and certainly negativity that so many Black Republicans are able to ignore or, again, set aside Trump's racism.
So I think the honest and generous answer is that many Black conservatives, I'm talking about the everyday folks, not the folks on Fox News or the folks like on the internet, like the everyday Black conservative is also potentially looking at Joe Biden and saying, well, you said if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black, and I'm Black. And they're looking at the 1994 crime bill, and they're looking at other things that can be tied to the Democratic Party. And they're saying, well, my material condition under this party seems to have not gotten better over the last 4 years or during the Obama era. And so if it's racism that I have to face, but it might mean that there are some economic benefits, then okay, I'll give that kind of like, and maybe they say the Democrats are just as racist as maybe what they might say. I don't agree with that. And I think it's actually kind of an unrigorous and shallow analysis, if I'm being honest with you.
Sure.
But I've engaged with enough of these people over the last couple of years to know that that is how they're thinking about it. I think if we were to take a deeper dive, a deeper look at the outcomes of policy, I'm thinking specifically about the Inflation Reduction Act, or I'm thinking about Biden's infrastructure bill versus, say, the Opportunity Zones program from Tim Scott and Donald Trump. If we were to look at these two side by side, we see that the Democratic president has a program that actually benefited the Black community in material ways at a significantly higher rate than the Opportunity Zones, which really just gave tax breaks to wealthy, thus accelerating gentrification and displacement. And so if we were to actually like take a look at these two things side by side, we see that the choice is pretty clear. But I think a more shallow kind of surface level analysis has led many to believe that these are just two wings on the same bird, right? Two different sides of the same coin. I think that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for joining me in solving the problem that is Black Republicanism. What a wonderful thing. Listen, if you're out there, this is what you have to look forward to every day, the week between the 24th and whatever the end of that week is, 28th or 28th.
Yeah.
You're going to do a great job. Again, thank you so much for accepting my tepid or nervous invitation. I wasn't sure you were going to say yes.
I'm nervous. I'm like, I'm excited, but
you're going to do great. It's going to be fantastic. Everybody needs to go out and subscribe to your channel right now. There'll be a link below. If you're interested in this, if you have somebody in your life that could benefit from this, a kid's book on Juneteenth, about Juneteenth, get this book. It's super accessible, amazing, and filled with information that's necessary. And by the way, not just if you got a Black child in your life, this needs to be taught to white children so they understand in a fulsome manner the history of the country. Black history isn't Black history solely. It's American history that needs to be taught at every level. Garrison, thanks for coming on and giving me some insights into things that I can't authoritatively speak about. And I guess we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you, Jesse. Looking forward to it.